His grip on the pencil tightened, like he could hold the whole situation together if he just squeezed hard enough. This wasn't the teacher he was supposed to become. Tiny gray circles, the kind that could shape a student's life, were slowly erased and replaced by new ones. One, then another, then another. He couldn't let them fail. Not after how hard he tried. His pride as a teacher wouldn't allow it. Tom's dream of becoming a teacher began in 8th grade, the first time he felt someone truly noticed him, believed in him, and listened to him. She never gave up on him, even as he gave up on himself. From then on, he transformed from an unmotivated student poised to skip high school to a top performing graduate at his teacher's college. Tom's now a teacher at Johnson Elementary in the Chicago public school system and has earned admiration of both students and teachers alike. A few months ago, his school introduced high stakes tests, known as the EOWAB test of basic skills. Students were required to take these tests at the end of each year, and students from the 3rd, 6th, and 8th grade were required to pass. What was once rare, holding back elementary students, was now official policy. But the stakes weren't limited to students. Schools with low scores moving forwards were at risk of being shut down entirely, shifting the burden of accountability onto the teachers. Reaching 8th grade, he made his duty to help students transition smoothly to high school. His approach was simple: teach students to value effort. In his view, persistence and growth mattered more than any one test score. He believed that even if a student didn't excel this year, the work ethic they built would carry them forward. But under the new system, effort alone wasn't enough. Many of his students were already years behind, and catching up in time for a high stakes exam was often impossible. The policy demanded results, not progress, and that shift left little room for Tom's philosophy to succeed. Still, he convinces his students to work hard and promises that they've done enough to pass the Iowa test. However, reality doesn't always cooperate. 2 weeks before the test, Tom reviews a mock exam and realizes that 7 of his students barely passed and 5 had outright failed. Concerned, he secures a copy of the actual test a few days beforehand, takes the hardest questions, changes some numbers, and shows them to his class as review practice questions. On test day, he tells the students they can ask questions if anything seems unclear, framing it with ambiguous wording. But some students, desperate, ask for more than that. He doesn't hand out answers, but he nudges them, subtle hints phrased as clarification. Near the end, when several students are still unfinished, he quietly loses track of time, allowing a few extra minutes, telling himself it was just a harmless slip. But this isn't enough. Out of the 12 students he was concerned about, 3 of them actually failed. He kept asking himself, was I not good enough as a teacher? Did I fail as an educator? But more than anything, he was worried about the kids who had trusted him, believed in his lessons, and now faced a reality that made those lessons feel hollow. He knew his reputation as one of the school's best, passionate, dedicated, respected, would only work against him in this situation. So, Tom cheated. Slowly, and with a shaky hand, he erased 10 different wrong answers across the 3 students' tests and circled the right ones. This time, there was no ambiguity, just a line crossed with real consequences. But what was he supposed to do? Tom knew what it felt like to want to quit after 8th grade. He'd been there himself. So when his students faced the threat of being held back, he feared not just for their grades, but for their futures. Years later, research would confirm this. An estimated 78% of 8th graders who failed to pass the EOLA test eventually dropped out by age 19, nearly 4 out of 5. Even after controlling for prior performance, analysts found that 8th grade retention increased the dropout risk by about 14% compared to similar students who were promoted. And these weren't just numbers, These were a validation of exactly what Tom sought to prevent. Holding students back could derail futures, not enhance them. Tom's story isn't unique. This story is inspired by a real case study featured in Freakonomics, where a spike in teacher cheating was uncovered in Chicago public schools after the introduction of high stakes standardized testing in 1996. Researchers analyzed over 700,000 test sheets, more than 100 million individual answers, and used students' pass scores to flag suspicious improvements in improbable answer patterns. Their findings revealed a deeper truth. When incentives are misaligned, even teachers, the very people meant to uphold academic integrity, can cross ethical lines. Ultimately, evidence revealed cheating in more than 200 classrooms per year, roughly 1 in 20 of every classroom in the Chicago public school system. But that estimate is extremely conservative. It only captures the most obvious and visible cases. The real numbers are likely much higher. A recent study of North Carolina school teachers found that 35% of respondents had witnessed colleagues cheating on standardized tests. Across 38 elementary and high schools in the Chicago public school system, at least a quarter of teaching staff left each year, many in the wake of closures. In schools that underwent the closure and restart model, where schools were shut down and reopened, rates of being rehired were dismal. 4 out of 5 schools rehired none of their original teachers. The fifth brought back just 4.7%. For teachers in these schools, there were no guarantees of reassignment. Even those with solid records faced financial uncertainty and the emotional toll of being uprooted from the communities they served. But Tom's case was a bit different. His goal wasn't personal gain, it was a sincere attempt to give struggling kids a boost of confidence in a system that had long abandoned them. This just shows how misaligned incentives cause even the best, most well intentioned teachers to cheat.